Welcome to Dreadful Visions, where we delve into the darkest depths of horror. Don't miss out on our terrifying tales. Subscribe now and join us on our journey into the unknown. Story 1. The Empty Hallway, a terrifying encounter on the last day of school. It was the final day of school, and excitement filled the air as students eagerly awaited the start of summer vacation. The halls buzzed with chatter and laughter, and the promise of freedom hung heavy in the air. But for one group of friends, the last day of school would be a day they would never forget. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of classes, Sarah, Jake, and Emily made plans to meet up at their usual spot, the abandoned hallway on the 3rd floor. It was a place shrouded in mystery, rumored to be haunted by the ghost of a former student who had tragically died on the last day of school many years ago. Undeterred by the rumors, the friends made their way to the 3rd floor, their laughter echoing off the walls as they reminisced about the year gone by. But as they approached the abandoned hallway, a sense of unease washed over them, and the air grew thick with tension. Ignoring their instincts, they pressed on, determined to explore the empty corridor and uncover its secrets. But as they stepped into the hallway, a chill ran down their spines, and the temperature seemed to drop with each passing moment. It was then that they heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible above the sound of their own breathing. They froze in terror, their hearts pounding in their chests as they strained to listen. And then, as if in response to their fear, the whisper grew louder, echoing through the empty hallway like a ghostly lament. With trembling hands, Sarah reached for her flashlight and clicked it on, illuminating the corridor with a feeble beam of light. But what she saw in that moment made her blood run cold. The walls were covered in strange symbols, etched into the plaster with what looked like blood. As they stared in horror at the eerie markings, a feeling of dread washed over them, and they knew they had to leave. But as they turned to go, they realized with growing horror that the hallway had changed. It was no longer the empty corridor they had entered. Instead, it had transformed into a labyrinth of twisting passages and dead ends, a maze of darkness that seemed to stretch on endlessly. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped, and the walls began to close in around them, suffocating them with their oppressive presence. Desperate to escape, they ran blindly through the maze, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they searched for a way out. But no matter which direction they turned, they found themselves back where they started, trapped in an endless loop of terror. As they stumbled through the darkness, their fear mounting with each passing moment, they heard the whisper again, a chilling voice that seemed to come from all around them, mocking them with its cruel laughter. And then, just when they thought they couldn't take it anymore, they saw it, a faint glimmer of light at the end of the corridor. With renewed hope, they raced toward it, their hearts pounding in their chests as they prayed for salvation. But as they reached the light, they realized with horror that it was not the way out. It was the entrance to a dark and twisted realm, a place of nightmares and despair. And as they stepped through the threshold, they knew that they would never escape, doomed to wander the empty halls for all eternity. Story 2. The Haunted Locker, a terrifying last day of school encounter. On the last day of school, excitement filled the air as students prepared to bid farewell to another year of classes and homework. But for one student, the final day of school would be anything but ordinary. As the bell rang, signaling the end of classes, David made his way to his locker to gather his belongings. But as he reached for the handle, a chill ran down his spine, and he hesitated, overcome by a sudden sense of dread. Ignoring his unease, David opened the locker and began to gather his books and belongings. But as he reached for his backpack, he felt something cold and clammy brush against his hand, a sensation that sent shivers down his spine. Startled, David recoiled, his heart pounding in his chest as he stared at the empty locker in disbelief. There was nothing there, no books, no backpack, nothing. And yet he could have sworn he felt something or someone touch him. Shaken, David slammed the locker shut and hurried away, his mind racing with thoughts of what he had just experienced. But as he made his way through the empty halls, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that something unseen was lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. Determined to put the encounter behind him, David tried to focus on the excitement of summer vacation. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that the empty locker held a secret he couldn't begin to fathom. As the days turned into weeks, David found himself haunted by the memory of the encounter, unable to escape the feeling of unease that had taken hold of him. He tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination, that there was nothing to be afraid of, but deep down he knew that something was terribly wrong. And then one night, as David lay in bed trying to sleep, he heard it, the sound of footsteps echoing through the empty halls, growing louder and louder with each passing moment. Terrified, he pulled the covers over his head and prayed for morning to come. But the footsteps continued, growing closer and closer until they were right outside his door. With a trembling hand, David reached for the doorknob and slowly turned it, his heart pounding in his chest as he prepared to face whatever horror awaited him on the other side. But as he opened the door, he was met with silence. The hallway was empty, the footsteps gone without a trace. And yet, David couldn't shake the feeling that he was not alone, that something unseen was still lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. Story 3. The Strange Ritual, a disturbing last day of school tradition. As the final day of school approached, excitement filled the air as students eagerly anticipated the start of summer vacation. But for one group of friends, the last day of school would take a dark and disturbing turn. On the morning of the last day of school, Sarah, Jake, and Emily gathered in the schoolyard to celebrate the end of another year. But as they chatted and laughed, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that there was a tension in the air that they couldn't quite place. Ignoring their unease, the friends made their way to their homeroom class for the final bell. But as they entered the classroom, they were met with a strange sight. Their classmates gathered in a circle, their faces solemn and their eyes fixed on a small object in the center of the room. Curious, Sarah, Jake, and Emily approached the circle, their hearts pounding in their chests as they tried to make sense of what was happening. And then, to their horror, they realized what the object was. A small, intricately carved doll, its eyes wide with an expression of malice. Confused and frightened, the friends tried to leave the room, but they found themselves rooted to the spot, unable to move as their classmates began to chant in unison. The words were strange and unfamiliar, a language that seemed to come from another time and place. As the chanting grew louder, the friends felt a wave of dizziness wash over them, and the world began to spin. And then, with a flash of blinding light, they were transported to a place unlike anything they had ever seen, a realm of darkness and despair, where nightmares lurked around every corner. With growing horror, Sarah, Jake, and Emily realized that they were trapped in the doll's twisted world, forced to confront their deepest fears and darkest secrets. And as they struggled to find a way out, they knew that their only hope of escape lay in unraveling the mystery of the strange ritual that had brought them there. With each passing moment, the friends grew more desperate, their resolve tested by the horrors that surrounded them. But as they delved deeper into the doll's dark past, they uncovered a truth more terrifying than they could have ever imagined, one that threatened to consume them all. In the end, Sarah, Jake, and Emily were forced to confront the darkness within themselves, to face their deepest fears and darkest desires head-on. And as they fought for their lives in the shadowy depths of the doll's world, they knew that their only hope of escape lay in finding the strength to overcome the horrors that awaited them. If you have enjoyed watching this video and are a fan of horror stories and scary things like this, please subscribe and comment down below any suggestions as to what you would like to see on this channel. Thank you for watching and have a good day.